Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
So I might have told you, I might not have, but a few weeks back, some kids on a golf cart swerved out of their way to hit my recycling bin.
Ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, the recycling bin was already in poor repair. There were some cracks. This only exacerbated the situation. So it's like floppy dog ears now until today, when these punks did not realize the one weapon that I have in my arsenal that they were not prepared for. Green duct tape. Green duct tape. It's the exact same shade of green, so much so that from 3 feet away, you can't even tell it's duct taped all over the entire recycling bin. But this is not a revenge podcast.
No, it's not. It's a movie podcast called Cinema Chop Shop, and thank you for listening to us today. We're a almost weekly, bi-weekly podcast that talks about movies and such, and I'm joined today by two of our favorites, Travis Cito, the OG.
I'm certainly my favorite.
And Todd.
Welcome to me.
And I'm your host, Shawn. And I don't know if you guys heard, but Donald's dead.
Yes.
Donald died.
Donald Duck?
No.
Donald Trump?
No, unfortunately, no. God chose the wrong Donald. He took
Donald Pleasance.
No, he took Donald Sutherland from us.
Boo.
Yes, on June 20th of 2024, Donald Sutherland, with a career that spanned 6 decades.
Yeah.
A loved and liked actor. He won a Primetime Emmy Award. He won 2 Golden Globe Awards, as well as a BAFTA Award nomination. However, he's considered one of the best actors never nominated for an Academy Award. And he was given an Academy Honorary Award in 2017, but that does not count. Also famously the father of Kiefer Sutherland and of Canadian descent, and I could not find it, but I'm pretty sure that he's related to a bigwig in Canadian royalty government stuff.
So like a branch off of a branch or something.
Something like that, even tighter than that, but that's Donald Sutherland. We're going to be talking about him tonight, as well as his some of his highest rated, biggest movies, and we're going to do it bracket style. We're going to fight to the finish to determine what is Donald Sutherland's, I almost said Donald Trump, Donald Sutherland's best film.
Can we just call him Donnie? Donnie South?
Donnie South?
Yeah.
I like that.
So it bears noting that I can't picture a world in which Donald Sutherland is not only alive, but actively working. He worked.
Yeah, totally. And he was
a grizzled veteran when we were born.
Yes.
And continued on that path.
True. And such a distinguished gentleman in his later years, just commanded a tremendous presence and a body of work that covered such a huge spectrum.
Yeah.
From his early years, where he was kind of I would call him kind of an outsider, a fringe type character actor.
If he was on a basketball team, he would be a role player.
Right. Oftentimes cast in like these hippie kind of roles, these counterculture type roles, and then as he got into his middle age, it kind of became a dad role in the late 70s, early 80s. And then he kind of pivoted and went into this distinguished gentleman kind of role. And
the elder statesman.
Yeah. So his career path was really great, and his body of work is fantastic. Another thing about Sutherland, you might know, you might not know, he was an anti-war activist. He started the Free Theater Associates with Jane Fonda, Peter Boyle, Howard Hessman, Elliot Gould, Mike Nichols.
Heavy hitters.
Yeah. And they were basically the counter to Bob Hope's USO tour in Vietnam. They were pushing the opposite agenda. Documents declassified in 2017 show that Sutherland was on the National Security Agent watch list between 71 and 73.
Yeah, that's just Richard Nixon.
At the request of the CIA because of his anti-war activities. He was a vocal opponent of the Vietnam War. He also opposed the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq.
Okay.
Which...
Good.
So were a lot of other people. Anything else we want to add about Don before we jump in?
I watched a few, rewatched a couple, watched a few for the first time this week, and he was just an amazing actor.
Yeah.
His range.
And his presence. Like, not a classically good-looking person, but his delivery and his, like I said, his presence was just uncanny.
I crammed for this episode because I came across 5 of his movies that I had not seen.
Okay.
So I went and rewatched those, and then, I went and watched 5 new ones, and I rewatched 2 of the heavy hitters just to make sure that I love them as much as I thought I did, and can confirm I do.
And this marathon took place in real time over the course of 24 hours.
24.
Yes.
I see what you did there. All right, so we're going to jump right in. We're going to try to get through this opening bracket with all 16 films, and for fairness' sake, we took out television movies. I also steered clear of some of the true ensemble pictures where he played a minor role, with the exception of one that Todd mentioned. To keep things fair, we used the Rotten Tomatoes scores to seed the brackets. So whether or not we agree with the Rotten Tomatoes score or not, that kept things completely fair instead of us stacking the deck for a perceived winner.
Well, I think this is the best. Well, I think this should be number 3.
So what we have then is a number 1 seed of Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978 with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%, directed by Philip Kaufman, starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, and Veronica Cartwright. And it's going against, and this was kind of the sentimental pick, it has the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of all the films that we're talking about tonight, 35%. I'm talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer from 1992, directed by Fran Rubel Kazooie.
This is his only feature film besides a movie called Tokyo Pop, which just sounds like a music genre.
It stars Christy Swanson, Donald Sutherland, Luke Perry, Hilary Swank, David Arquette, and Paul Rubens.
And Rutger Hauer.
Oh, yeah, Rutger Hauer's in it as well.
Also written by Joss Whedon.
It's a stacked deck in terms of a movie, and, of course, we know the television show that it spawned was probably greater than the film itself.
Well, I love this movie. I love this film, and I've never seen an episode of the TV show. That's just Travis being Travis.
For one reason or another, has a lower Rotten Tomatoes score than Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So let's sum up these 2 films briefly, and then we'll duke it out.
Real quick, I wanted to mention that Philip Kaufman, the director, best known for The Wanderers, Henry and June, which I watched recently, very steamy movie, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and, of course, The Right Stuff. So he's got some stuff under his belt as well. Also, the one person that you didn't mention who's in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is kind of a fanboy sci-fi pick, is Leonard
Nimoy. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Leonard Nimoy. All right, so Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a remake of a 1950s horror film, clearly a Red Scare type movie where everyone is being taken over by this unseen force, and they're going away to their secret meetings, and only the smart people have figured out what's going on, and one by one the rest of the country gets converted into these pod people.
When strange seeds drift to Earth from space, mysterious pods begin to grow and invade San Francisco, replicating the city's residents one body at a time. And everybody's seen the picture of Donald Sutherland, the still frame, or the final shot of this movie, with his just eyes agape,
his mouth wide open,
pointing straight forward, almost in rigor.
Yeah.
Todd, I know you're a fan of this movie.
Oh, yes. One interesting thing I think about this movie when they adapted it, probably maybe the best film remake of all time, possibly, certainly in the top 3 to 5, that I thought was interesting was the fact that in the original film, it's in a small town, and in this one, they moved it into a city.
San Francisco.
Right. And that was intentionally done by Philip Kaufman because he thought that that there would be more of a claustrophobic feel that he wanted to create, having it in the city.
Well, bigger population makes it harder to stay invisible.
Correct.
When you've got all of these knowing pod people. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a campy adventure horror comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the maybe unique in pop culture history where the TV show fought not just. I mean, sometimes there have been sometimes there have been spinoffs like that worked, like MASH, for example, that we'll talk about later.
Firefly.
Yeah.
Also Joss Whedon.
Yes, but in this case, I mean, it's just no contest that the TV show, at least from a pop culture thumbprint, far exceeds it.
Christy Swanson was at the height of her powers.
Oh, adorable.
Donald Sutherland is perfect as the kind of reclusive. What's the word they use for it? Maker, not maker, but he's the equivalent.
He's the mentor.
He's the mentor. Yes, training her to be a slayer. Paul Rubens is the henchman of Rutger Hauer's Big Bad. And one of my favorite death scenes of all time in cinema is Paul Rubens dying. He just so over the top. Yeah. So fantastic. David Arquette was worth mentioning, but he's not the biggest part of the movie.
Oh, no.
And Luke Perry's name is Pike. Pike's not a name, it's a fish.
It's also a weapon. All right, all in favor of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, raise that hand.
I think
or say aye, since it's an audio medium.
Yeah.
Aye.
I'm going to be the odd man out on this one. I know that Invasion is a better film. I just have such a sentimental attachment to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Fair.
I'm taking it. And listen, somebody's got to lose.
Okay. All right, so Invasion moves forward. Next up, we've got 1970 MASH with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 84%.
Oh, yet another example where a TV show saw far more success than the film it was based on.
Right.
Absolutely. Directed by the famous Robert Altman with his tremendous body of work, oftentimes featuring ensemble casts.
Right.
Highlights Gosford Park, Nashville, and Shortcuts.
Yep. This stars Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, Barry Berghoff, who went on to be in the television series, and Sally Kellerman,
Tom Skerritt, and Robert Duvall as well.
Oh, that's right.
And one of the great movie themes of all time, Suicide is Painless.
Which was written by Robert Altman's son, correct?
And they actually play the lyric version in the film versus television.
The instrumental.
Just the instrumental.
Well, it's a little bit heavy for...
I don't think you could have gotten away with
mainstream audience.
No, not at all. We covered this on the podcast several episodes.
It was the Elliot Gould episode.
Yes. It's going head-to-head with 2005's Pride and Prejudice with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 87%. This particular adaptation of the novel is directed by Joe Wright.
Mm-hmm. He did Darkest Hour, the Winston Churchill biopic, and also Atonement, and then Hannah. Did anybody see Hannah about the child assassin? He did that as well, which is a little bit out of the wheelhouse of those other ones.
Tremendous cast on this. These folks went on to be even bigger stars than they are at the time of this movie. Keira Knightley, Matthew McFadden, Carey Mulligan, Rosamund Pike, Jenna Malone, Donald Sutherland, Tallulah Riley, who I still think is adorable.
Yep.
Rupert Friend and Simon Woods.
Also Tom Hollander and Kelly Riley.
Oh gosh, that's right. What can we say about this? I mean, it was a very good adaptation.
It's
of
a
Pride and
well-known
Prejudice.
story. I feel like it's a pretty solid adaptation. The acting is great. Everybody looks perfect. I kind of like this one.
I like it too, and it tracks with what we were saying earlier about Donald Sutherland's career trajectory. It's very definition of a distinguished gentleman.
Yes.
Yep.
And he's so likable in this.
Yes, he's a sweet dad, and you can connect with him on an emotional level in this movie for sure. Personally, I prefer MASH over Pride and Prejudice in this case.
So for any listeners who don't know the premise of these movies, the first one, MASH, is the staff of a Korean War field hospital uses humor and hijinks to keep their sanity in the face of the horror of war. And then in Pride and Prejudice, sparks fly when spirited Elizabeth Bennet meets a single, rich, and proud Mr. Darcy. But Mr. Darcy reluctantly finds himself falling in love with a woman beneath his class. Can each overcome their own Pride and Prejudice?
Are they still teaching Pride and Prejudice in high schools?
I don't know. I read it twice in college in 2 different classes.
Really?
Yeah. And I was an English major, of course, but one in a history class, though, and one in a regular English class.
It was high school for me on that one.
Yeah.
All right, so we're voting?
Let's go for it. Who likes what?
Okay, you said MASH.
Give me your feedback. What do you think?
So in terms of which of these do I want to advance?
Well, let's take a look at it in terms of Donald Sutherland's performance. In terms of how do you
Okay,
rate...
we're going performance.
Well, I think that in a lot of these cases we can look at it that way because, as we'll see in some of these other films, he plays a minor role in some cases. And is its performance strong enough to carry it?
Right.
Well, this is a pretty big role for him.
Yeah.
At this point. Now, it's...
Which one are you talking about, MASH?
Yeah, MASH.
Yeah.
It's tough to share a screen with Elliot Gould. Like, the two of them command attention.
Now, Sutherland's character in this was he Trapper John in this?
Oh.
Or was that Gould's character?
I'm not 100%.
I just watched it again this week, and I'm just bad at remembering names of the characters. But he was one of the.
I want to say that Elliot Gould's character is the one who was recast with Alan Alda, right?
Donald Sutherland is Hawkeye Pierce in this film.
Right, Hawkeye.
Elliot Gould is Trapper John in this.
Okay, so I had it backwards. It's almost apples to oranges because one is 1970 Donald Sutherland, who's like still fairly young and merry prankstery.
Yep.
And in Pride and Prejudice, he's a completely different person. He's much older. He's now a aging father, hopes to be a grandfather. Completely different roles. But if I had to pick, I'm going MASH.
Okay. Todd?
Going with MASH as well. Just more, honestly, more my speed. I'll say more about the MASH in the next round, but it was just, I'm not a big the sexual repression and stuff in the Victoria movies. It's like, all right.
I'm going to go MASH as well. All right, moving it right along. Two movies that were new to me this week.
Me too. At least the first one.
We're looking at Panic from the year 2000.
In the year 2000.
Thank you. Obligatory. The Rotten Tomato score of 91%. Directed by Henry Brommel.
This is his sole directorial feature film.
Okay.
He did TV stuff, but this is his only feature.
This stars William H. Macy, Donald Sutherland, Neve Campbell. Sorry. It's just me.
Nev.
And John Ritter.
Also, don't forget, woohoo! Tracy Ullman.
Yes, Tracy Ullman, and she's a good actress. And
yeah, I expected her to be like comic relief, but she wasn't.
No. She's quite good. I felt that the 91% was a little overrated, but it was a good film. I liked it.
I enjoyed it too. You recommended it. No, well, you pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
So it was one of the ones you were watching to prep for this, and I think I said you had me at John Ritter.
John Ritter.
Yeah.
John Ritter is so fucking good in this movie as the psychiatrist. We'll get into the synopsis in a second.
Is it just me though, or is aging hitman going through a midlife crisis a trope?
I said in my Letterboxd review that it was kind of like The Sopranos reinterpreted by the Coen brothers.
Okay.
Well, go ahead and hit the synopsis for us.
All right, so we've got Panic, and we already mentioned who's in it and who directed it, but Alex, a hitman, tries to get out of the family business, but his father, played by Donald Sutherland, won't let him do so. While seeking the help of a therapist, there's your Sopranos connection, he meets a sexually charged 23-year-old woman, Neve Campbell, with whom he falls in love. And there's definitely more to it than that. He's, like we said, midlife crisis. He feels like he's in a rut, both in his relationship with his family and his other obligations to his father that his wife and child do not know about. He feels obligated to continue the family business, and the real stick in the spokes that sends him over the edge is when he figures out that his dad is now trying to groom his own son.
Yeah, yeah. The key word is grooming, and that's when you get this full picture of just how callous his character is, and that's not the kind of role that Donald Sutherland had played up to this point.
Right.
So for me, it was kind of an eye opener. I was like, wow, man, he really played cold blooded well.
Yep.
Like William Shatner in that racist movie we talked about last week.
It's going head to head with another, as I said, another movie I had not seen before, A Dry White Season, white being the operative word, from 1989.
Not very subtle.
1989 with a Rotten Tomato score of 82. It's directed by Ushan Palsi,
who's a female director.
and it stars Donald Sutherland, Susan Sarandon, Marlon Brando, Janet Sussman. I'm going to butcher these names. Marcus Mokoai.
I didn't go that far in my list, but I will mention that the director...
And Thilko Ntshinga.
I think you nailed it. The director, not only is she a she, she's also a black she. She's a black woman director, and her other big movie that she's directed is called Sugarcane Alley.
Okay.
So a white middle-class South African suburbanite with no interest in politics agrees to help his black gardener find his jailed son. His investigation opens his eyes to the horrors committed by the secret police and turns him into a target.
Yeah, I'd seen A Dry White Season before. I rewatched it, and I mean, those types of movies don't age particularly well because of the white savior thing that just becomes so obvious in those movies. Now, the background of the director makes that a little more interesting or complicated, I guess.
Yeah.
But those types of movies movies in general for me that have an agenda, like civil rights, all that's important and to explore. But a lot of times it's just, as a film, it ends up being too one note.
And it's all a matter of the perspective of the time as well. Like looking back in hindsight, we can see this from a certain lens,
right?
Whereas they were seeing it as current events.
Yeah.
And one side is pearly white, the good guys. The others, it's like professional wrestling. The other sides are all grizzled villains, like that police chief.
Yeah, there are some issues with the story. I agree with the white savior thing. I mean, like Travis just said, when this movie was filming in '88, apartheid was still a big problem.
Yeah,
Nelson Mandela was still imprisoned. I mean, we still had a lot of issues there, and Marlon Brando doing a kind of a Perry Mason kind of thing was not great.
I was surprised to see him on the.
I mean, he was
in the cast.
Yeah, I mean, he was really sticking it to that despicable police chief or head investigator guy.
Yep.
Panic, I felt, was a little overrated by its Rotten Tomatoes score. Like I said, I love Donald Sutherland's callousness. I felt that the story itself, the William H. Macy, Nev Campbell thing, was not quite developed correctly.
Yeah.
It felt kind of rushed a little bit.
Yeah.
But John Ritter was fantastic as a psychiatrist.
About halfway through, I was like, "Oh my god, I've never heard of this. This is a lost classic." And then it kind of lost steam.
It kind
of
spirals a little bit. So yeah, I'm kind of torn on both of these. I think on a sentimental level, I did like Dry White Season.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
And I liked Donald Sutherland as kind of this intrepid social justice warrior. I thought he was okay in that. But what do you guys think?
The arc of that, though, almost reminded me of that Dolph Lundgren movie that we saw, where it's like he's
One Man,
because at the beginning of it, he's kind of clueless and he doesn't really know what's going on, and then he gets woke as well. I don't know, that kind of thing. I enjoyed it, but I just that kind of formula where, okay, we have an agenda, we got to get this news out to the world, and it was important, as you said, that is important context that apartheid was still going on.
Is that the one where Kelsey Grammer's the bad guy?
Yeah.
I just watched the Kelsey Grammer movie the other night. I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
Was it Money Plane?
No.
Oh man,
it's
Money Plane's the shit.
It's like this Lifetime kind of thing where he's a Marine Corps vet who is the guardian of his comrade's offspring and raises her in a very lavish house. It seemed kind of Hallmarky, Lifetimey.
Well, Sideshow Bob is still his greatest role.
Absolutely.
All right, so gun to your head. Give me your pick.
I'm going with Panic. It's flawed, but less formulaic. I did, and even though it is flawed, I did really appreciate what it was trying to do.
Yeah, I liked Panic better.
All right, Panic for the win. Next up is going to be Dirty Dozen from 1967 with a Rotten Tomatoes of 81.
Yes.
Directed by Robert Aldrich,
who also did The Longest Yard, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
One of my favorite movies.
Great movie. Stars Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, John Cassavetes, Telly Savalas, Ernest Borgnine, Donald Sutherland, and some other folks.
Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is kind of interesting because there's a movie later on that we'll talk about that clearly
is influenced by this.
Influenced by this, no small part from the cast.
Yep.
But that was also a very successful formula in the late 60s, early 70s was the ragtag motley crew of outsiders.
There's a whole Rick and Morty
Escape.
episode.
Yeah, the Great
There's a whole
Escape,
Rick and Morty episode about putting the ragtag band together.
Yeah. Tapping each other for their specialty. Yep.
Usually a bunch of anti-heroes.
Totally.
Certainly the case here because all of these characters are heading to the gallows or at least significant time in the clink.
Synopsis.
During World War II, a rebellious U.S. Army major is assigned a dozen convicted murderers to train and lead them into a mass assassination mission of German officers. And then that's going up against...
It's going up against Animal House.
This is a pretty big movie.
This is kind of tough.
Kind of wrote the book for your college romp movie,
Yeah,
right?
1978, Rotten Tomatoes, 91%. Directed by the murderer John Landis.
And we're not even going to mention any of his other credits.
It stars John Belushi, Tim Matheson, Tom Hulse, Donald Sutherland, Stephen Furst, Kevin Bacon, Karen Allen, Bruce McGill,
And Otis Day.
and Otis Day.
Also, this was co-written by Harold Ramis.
Yes.
Which you cannot ignore the genius of Harold Ramis.
Hit us with that synopsis.
At a 1962 college, Dean Vernon Wormer is determined to expel the entire Delta Tau Chi fraternity. But those troublemakers have other plans for him.
So the cool thing about Animal House as it pertains to Donald Sutherland, he has the role as the pot-smoking professor, Dave Jennings.
Who's a little bit seductive of his female students.
Yes, I'll speak to him later on when we cover another film. I've got a crazy conspiracy theory about these movies. But it made him known to younger fans as a result of the film's popularity. When he was cast, he was offered either $40,000 up front or 2% of the film's gross earnings. Thinking the film would certainly not be a big success, he chose the upfront payment, and he considers it one of the worst decisions he ever made in his filmmaking career.
Probably so.
Because the film made millions of dollars,
Oh, yes.
and he would have made even more bank.
Well, and then it was at the right before video came out, so I imagine the VHS of that when it came out a couple years later probably made a mint as well.
So Todd, you pointed out earlier in the week as we were watching and researching movies that it was kind of a misstep for us to throw Dirty Dozen in here because Donald Sutherland does play a very, very minor role.
Well, but this matchup though actually is good in that regard because he also plays a fairly minor. I mean, doesn't have much screen time.
No,
in
like
Animal
3
House.
minutes at most.
Yeah.
I was watching Dirty Dozen. I feel like I have to have seen it before, but I was watching it for this, and I kept seeing Donald Sutherland. And in the first half, if not two trimesters of the movie, the first two acts, he doesn't have any lines.
Right.
All he does is act goofy and laugh like he's kind of tripping or something.
Yeah. And it tracks with that body of work from that time. Like I said, where he's in that strange counterculture and Dirty Dozen, of course, 1967, clearly at the height of the hippie movement, but set in a time where the hippies were not a thing. But yet he kind of carried that over into his portrayal of these characters.
I thought John Cassavetes was really good.
Oh, Cassavetes
Oh,
is
yeah.
great.
Franco.
Cassavetes was
So good.
fantastic.
Just the camaraderie, that arc between we've got these people who don't get along with society. Can they get along with each other well enough to do the job? Oh, and another thing is that even though Donald Sutherland's character was somewhat minor compared to some of the other actors, he did get to die on screen.
Yep.
That's always fun.
And, again, the classic anti-hero thing. Can we make the audience care about these societal outsiders who have committed,
Right on.
crimes?
All right, so we've got two films where Donald Sutherland has
this is tough.
minor
It
roles.
is.
I guess
This was a tough matchup.
Where does he excel the most?
Well,
What sticks out in your memory?
I mean, here's the thing. The problem with this matchup, if either one of these movies were matched up with something else, if I were using the Donald Sutherland standard, it would get eliminated just for the simple fact that it's such a minor supporting role in both cases. However, since they're matched up against each other, it's a little tougher, and I like both movies a lot. I probably would have to go with Animal House. Just it seems like that. I mean, both movies have cultural cachet, but
I think Animal House is much more of a watershed moment in
Yeah,
comedy.
I think so. I mean,
I'm picking Animal House because, in terms of his performances, that one sticks out. In my mind.
that one.
I'm
is-
picking Animal House because I'm a party boy.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm picking Animal House because I wish I was Donald Sutherland's character in real life.
right. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that gets it. All right, we're going to take a break, go pee in the yard. We're going to resume the back half of these brackets, and then we're going to kick it into high gear and determine the winner. But not before we say...
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some.
Sutherland fried chicken.
All right, all right.
Okay.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
All right, we are back. We all peed in the yard. We don't have beer check-ins that are worthy of comment unless you guys want to say something now. So we're just going to dive right back into the back half of the bracket. And we're going to lead off with 1971's Clute.
It sounds way more dirty than it is.
It's a 93% Rotten Tomatoes. It's directed by Alan Pakula.
Alan J. Pakula.
Pakula?
He's the Polish Dracula.
Tell me about his films.
Oh, so he also did All the President's Men, Sophie's Choice, and The Parallax View.
I like the Parallax
Yeah,
View.
the Parallax View is great.
It stars Donald Sutherland, Jane Fonda, Roy Scheider, Dorothy Tristan, and Gene Stapleton.
Okay.
This is going to be the first of one half of the Archie Bunker cast in these movies.
Okay, yeah.
Travis, give us a rundown.
A small-town detective searching for a missing man has only one lead, a connection with a New York prostitute. Said prostitute is played by Jane Fonda. The small-town detective is Donald Sutherland. And what really ensues after that, Todd?
He falls for her.
One of the things about this movie, I really like the film a lot, except for, as you say, there is the predictable thing where they're at odds, the two characters, the Sutherland and Jane Fonda character, and then they, fall for each other. And then at the ending, the bad guy has a long Bond villain style soliloquy that I thought was just pulled me out of the movie a bit.
But it is a very noirish kind of...
And it is
So I do like-
1971 also.
There was a lot I liked about it. The performance of Sutherland was great. He, had that, I don't know that noir thing going on, I guess you'd call it.
It's a good detective movie and a pretty decent romance as well.
All right, so we're going to go head-to-head against Kelly's Heroes from 1979. Is that right?
The highest rate, it's from 1970. It's got a 79% on
That's
Rotten
a
Tomatoes.
typo on my sheet. I knew that wasn't right. 1970, Rotten Tomatoes 79, directed by...
Interestingly, this is the highest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes about a sandwich shop.
Kelly's Heroes. That's cute. Directed by Brian G. Hutton.
Uh-huh.
What
No relation. Where Eagles Dare, Night Watch, and Sol Madrid.
It stars Clint Eastwood, Donald Sutherland, Telly Savalas, Don Rickles, Carol O'Connor. There's your back half of
And?
the All in the Family, and Henry Dean Stanton.
And
And who?
Gavin MacLeod.
Oh, Gavin MacLeod's in.
Yes.
Yeah, but Dean Stanton was his credit in the
Dean
film.
Stockwell, was right.
No, Harry Dean Stanton.
Was it Harry Dean Stanton?
Yeah. He's
I
in
saw
it.
that character and I thought it was Dean Stockwell.
No, it's Harry Dean Stanton, and he's credited as Dean Stanton in it.
Why did I think it was Dean Stockwell? I guess because I saw the name Dean at the end.
Synopsis it for
A
us.
group of U.S. soldiers sneaks across enemy lines in World War II, France. Sound familiar? To get their hands on a secret stash of Nazi treasure. So obviously some similar tones to The Dirty Dozen.
Very much. So, yeah.
We've got your ragtag group of Motley Crue. You've got
And you have Telly Savalas.
Telly Savalas is
Yes.
back.
and Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland.
back.
Yeah, so it seems like Clint Eastwood just wanted to be in a Dirty Dozen movie.
Yeah. So my crazy conspiracy theory is that Donald Sutherland, who plays a kind of a hippie-ish tank operator, because when they come across him at the beginning, he almost has like a commune set up around these tanks, and
he's got a whole thing about people having negative energy.
Vibes. It's about the vibes,
and they're all drinking wine. They're chicks hanging around. There's even a scene where like he's up in a hayloft with a girl,
but he's still got control of all this weaponry.
So what's your theory?
So my theory is, so this is around 1945, in World War II. He gets all this Nazi gold. He bugs out. He drops out. He joins, the counterculture, the pre-hippie movement, and he resurfaces again in 1962 as a professor at the university.
Okay.
For Animal House.
I thought you were going to say he goes on a murderous rampage and ends up on death row, thus becoming part of the Dirty Dozen.
The Dirty Dozen. No.
Yeah.
What do we think about him in this film?
Okay. So I rewatched both The Dirty Dozen and Kelly's Heroes this week after many years, and I always like both movies. Even though Kelly's Heroes is the derivative film, clearly, I think I liked that movie better, and his performance, Donald Sutherland's, I think, was more rich and substantial.
I think Donald Sutherland kind of stole the show for me out of that cast. Clint Eastwood was Clint Eastwood. Telly Savalas was Telly Savalas.
Yeah.
And you have this wild card of Donald Sutherland, who is totally in control of his shit the whole time, even though he plays it like he's just easy breezy, lemon squeezy. I really enjoyed his performance.
Everything that he says, he knows what he's doing, even though Telly Savalas keeps, taking digs at him.
And I love the fact
he keeps calling him a crazy bastard.
I like when he was given the tour of the tank that they had retro modified to be faster than any other tank, but when it comes time to fix the tank, he's like, "Hey man, I don't fix the tanks. I just, I'm just right up on top. Those guys will take care of it."
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Travis?
So I think that there's aspects of both of these films that are very likable, but for me, I feel like Clute is more of an original film than Kelly's Heroes is. I think it's less derivative.
That's a good point.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go the other direction with Kelly's Heroes.
Okay.
I would because I rewatched Kelly's Heroes this afternoon, so I would have thought Clute going in.
Is it a recency bias?
I don't think so. I saw Clute a couple years ago. I just really liked Kelly's Heroes. I liked Sutherland's performance.
I see Clute every day, you know what I'm saying?
Obviously, Kelly's Heroes is a bit derivative, but I did think there were flaws in Clute as well. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Kelly's Heroes.
I'm Clute. He's Kelly's Heroes. Tiebreaker.
I think because I'm focusing on Donald Sutherland's performances and what I took away from the movies, I'm going to go with Kelly's Heroes as well.
An
That's
upset,
cool.
a 3 versus 14 upset.
It's a pretty big upset.
Wow.
Can Kelly's Heroes pull off the Cinderella story and go all the way?
Wait.
There's got to be a Cinderella. I think this is our biggest one so far.
All right, next up we've got, and we're going to use the Hunger Games as the lead
As a franchise or the film itself?
We'll focus on the first one, but we do know that he was in several. So the Hunger Games, 2012, Rotten Tomatoes, 84%.
See, I don't think that's the correct Rotten Tomatoes score.
You don't think so?
I think that the Rotten Tomatoes score for the Hunger Games Catching Fire is an 84.
I thought
I
it
could
was
be wrong.
the first one.
But
I called
also
myself
on the
dumb.
bracket,
So your memory
it
was
says,
that it got
says
worse
Catch All.
Well, I did say Catch All, but I used the first one as kind of the baseline score.
Okay.
So to clarify what you were saying, your memory is that Hunger Games got worse reviews when it initially came out, and then better reviews in retrospect. Is that?
I mean, that
right?
you're really putting a lot of faith in my memory just by asking that question.
Well, I mean, that definitely happens when you go back and look at those things. But anyway, I was just
hit us with that synopsis, and tell us about the director, Gary Ross.
Okay, so I didn't write anything down about him because I thought that a lot of these movies are directed by different people, aren't they?
Yeah, but we'll...
Okay, so I don't have anything on Gary Ross.
Okay, well then that's fine. The cast of the first one is what I'm looking at, and they carry over. You've got J. Law.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Donald Sutherland. Josh Hutcherson.
Hutch.
Lenny Kravitz. Jack Quaid.
El Crab.
Jack
Right?
Quaid, Woody Harrelson, Liam Hemsworth, Stanley Tucci,
The Tooch.
Wes Bentley, and Elizabeth Banks,
Yes.
among others.
I wrote among others as well. Katniss Everdeen voluntarily takes her younger sister's place in The Hunger Games, a televised competition in which 2 teenagers from each of the 12 districts of Panem are chosen at random to fight to the death. So this movie was very popular when it came out, based on the series of books of the same name, and
84%.
84 is we're going with it 84%, and I think that for American audiences it was very much a novelty because you have these kids fighting to the death in a post-apocalyptic weirdo world. But it has to be pointed out that the plot of these books and these movies borrows heavily from Battle Royale.
And Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
And Lord of the Flies to a certain extent, but Battle Royale was also influenced by Lord of the Flies and came out several years
A
before these.
fantastic film.
Yes. So, to me, that takes a couple points off
Yeah,
of it.
young adult fiction. But let's talk about his role. Donald Sutherland was the president.
Yes.
This is very clearly how the Gen Zs know him when you're talking about Donald Sutherland just
And he
passed away.
seems very authoritarian presidential.
Very authoritarian, very, very dignified looking,
Mm-hmm.
very royal.
I also love all the hairdos. He didn't go so much for the hairdos,
Yeah.
but Elizabeth Banks and Wes Bentley,
Oh, they were hilarious.
Did it.
That was another thing about his second half of the career, too, is that there were different, always very elegant hairstyles.
Yes. He could pull off the white beard for show. We're going head-to-head with Ordinary People from 1980, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 89%, directed by Robert Redford. Who's he?
Needs no introduction.
It stars Timothy Hutton, who received the Best Supporting Actor
Still the
Oscar.
youngest male winner ever.
Yep, that sucks when you peak that early.
Yeah.
Donald Sutherland, Mary Tyler Moore, Judd Hirsch, Elizabeth McGovern, and Adam Baldwin. I just wanted to mention that he's in this.
I got one more.
Who?
M. Emmett Walsh.
Oh yeah, M.
Rest in peace.
Oh God, he's so good. Travis, give us the synopsis.
The accidental death of the older son of an affluent family deeply strains the relationships among the bitter mother, the good-natured father, and the guilt-ridden younger son. Guilt-ridden younger son is Timothy Hutton, who attempts suicide and then goes into therapy, right?
Yep.
And who's his therapist?
It's Judd Hirsch.
Yeah.
Which, again, another great psychologist casting.
Good
And
casting.
Could the Goodwill Hunting script have been any less subtle about ripping off a movie than they were with the Robin Williams character?
Right.
I was immediately
Okay,
thought of that.
interesting.
Shots fired by Todd there. I think in my review I said, boy, Robert Redford knows how to hit you in the feels.
Yeah, he does.
He's really good with those family dynamics. Mary Tyler Moore, shocking just how cold she was.
Yeah, and especially to an American audience who knows her from the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Right. And
Not warm at all.
Not warm at all, but of course, it's easy to understand those were defenses against this tragedy that hit the family. And Donald Sutherland playing the soft dad trying to kind of keep shit together and keep the family cohesive. And, of course, Timothy Hutton going through all of his business. By the way, Elizabeth McGovern was so fucking cute. Oh, my God.
Oh, yes.
Would you say she was at the height of her powers?
I don't know. Downton Abbey would disagree.
Oh, okay.
She rivaled, actually, one of my standards from that era is, of course, Sloane from
Mia Sara.
Ferris Bueller.
Mia Sara,
Ferris Bueller's Day
yeah.
Off. Well, that's a few years later, but
I love Mia Sara.
yeah.
Yeah, she's in a bunch of good stuff that I like. She's one of my girls.
Yeah.
So, comments.
So I had never seen Ordinary People. That was a hole in my.
That was mine, too. I
filmography.
thought I had, but I had not.
Yeah, no. I liked it quite a bit. Mainly, it's a performance film. I did think it was a bit soap operatic and melodramatic for my taste a bit. However, the powerhouse, everyone in that movie was just on,
Yes.
hitting on all cylinders. And it really was. Timothy Hutton deserved that Oscar, I would say. Well, without having gone through and watched all the movies from that year. But it was an Oscar-worthy performance. I mean, he was really, with some heavy-hitting veterans, he really did kind of stand on his own in that performance. Sutherland,
I actually did go back and watch all of the Oscar-nominated films from 1980, and he deserved it.
Awesome. And, of course, since we're focusing on Sutherland, another kind of different shade to his performance there, playing this kind of reserve, like he's a people pleaser type of dad. He's always kind of kowtowed to the wishes of the mother. He's always tried to play the guy that's like figuring out how to get along with everybody.
Or does he know
that
if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy?
Right. But all the performances in this were great. It's kind of a great performance film. And so even though maybe a little on the melodramatic side, if I'm going to pick one of these movies, I'm going to go with Ordinary People.
Well, I think that Donald Sutherland brought a dimension of vulnerability to this role that he had not in some of his others around this time, and also kind of fast forwarding to look at the Dry White Season, where he's the father figure who plays a very prominent role in keeping the family unit together, or trying to at least. I think that this performance was more nuanced than those, and of course, up until this point, you had him kind of being a leading man in these the Body Snatchers, not a very minor role in Animal House. I just felt that he was really, really impactful, and of course, kind of hard to eclipse Timothy Hutton's really great performance, and that role was written so well. But I'm going to go with Ordinary People myself.
I am as well. Ordinary People. As much as I dislike the Hunger Games.
All right, next up. This is a film that I saw right after it came out, and I did not get a chance to rewatch it, so I'm going to go on distant memory.
I didn't watch it until way after it came out, and I was shocked.
Okay. So we're dealing with 6 Degrees of Separation from 1993, Rotten Tomatoes score of 88%. Directed by Fred Schapisi, and his only other notable directorial film is Roxanne with Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah. Not that Roxanne. It stars Will Smith, a very young Will Smith, right out of Bel Air.
And a long pre-slap Will Smith.
Way before the slap.
Stockard Channing, Donald Sutherland, Ian McKellen, and J.J. Abrams in a role?
Super weird. Another cameo in this movie is the artist Chuck Close. Not playing himself.
I thought you were about to say the artist formerly known as Prince.
No, Chuck Close.
Love Chuck Close's
You're familiar
work.
with his work. He's one of my... rest in peace. He was one of my favorite famous artists. It's kind of interesting that he's in this because he suffered so much trauma and rebirth in his own career. Like, he was a realist painter when he was young, and then had a embolism or something, some spinal
art
thing.
Was painful for him, and then he went prolific after that.
And then he reinvented himself as an artist, which is thematically similar to this movie.
Look up Chuck Close if you haven't seen his work.
Yes. The premise of the movie is, it leaves a lot out, but an affluent New York City couple finds their lives touched, intruded upon, and compelled by a mysterious young black man who is never quite who he says he is. Who he says he is, when he comes to their door, is the son of Sidney Poitier.
Yes.
And they're so up in the clouds that he could be telling the truth.
Well, this is also pre-Google, so it's kind of hard to check that out without going to the library.
Right.
So, and then, of course, he was also a friend of their Ivy League children.
Yes.
So he had a little
Or at least claims
to be. Right. So there's your backstory on that. It's going head-to-head with 1991's JFK, Rotten Tomatoes score of 84%, directed by Oliver Stone.
I think it's pronounced Gifk.
Gifk. It stars Kevin Costner, Gary Oldman, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, John Candy, Jack Lemmon, Kevin Bacon, Ed Asner, and I'm sure some other people.
Brian Doyle Murray, Wayne Knight, Michael Rooker, Laurie Metcalf, Joe Pesci, Walter Matthau. Did you say Walter Matthau?
Did not.
Tommy Lee Jones, John Larroquette.
I said Tommy Lee, yep.
And, of course, Donald Sutherland.
It was kind of the Oppenheimer of its
Yeah.
day. You also forgot one star.
Who?
Back and to the left.
Back
And to the left.
So this 3.5 hour conspiracy theory movie was pretty big at the time, and it's a hard movie to find today.
It's a hard movie to watch.
You won't find it streaming anywhere.
So they just released last fall a 4K version of it, which I purchased from Shout Factory.
Yeah.
So I've seen it fairly recently. It's a beautiful edition.
And of course, Donald Sutherland plays the mysterious Mr. X in one scene. Yes, is that right? He has one
It's in like a parking
I
garage.
feel like maybe there was. Maybe you're right. I can't.
He's
I
based
didn't
on
think
an
about
actual.
It, but yeah.
He's based on an actual person, and I didn't jot
Yeah.
down the person, but it's thought that perhaps it's a little bit embellished for film in terms.
They
of
needed
what
their
his
deep
role.
throat.
Yeah, he is essentially deep throat. He's
Well, anyone who knows Oliver Stone's like actual politics knows that he probably thought that he was revealing the.
I mean, do we
the
need
truth
a
to
bigger
people.
synopsis?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's about JFK's assassination.
New
and-
Orleans District
yeah.
Attorney Jim Garrison discovers there's more to the Kennedy assassination than the official story.
Right. Yeah, this isn't though. If you've never seen the movie, it's not a biopic.
No.
JFK himself is not really in it, other than in dramatizations.
Right.
Of his
They,
murder.
they've got a lot of historical figures who are credited in the film, but it's all archival footage. Excuse me.
One of the things watching the film that I think is notable and was brilliant about the movie, there are scenes where they're ostensibly watching the Zapruder footage, which is the famous footage from the Hill. I thought it was actual footage from the Zapruder film. That's how well it was edited and shot.
Okay.
And it wasn't. It was actually, put together
That's
for the
awesome.
film. But the production values of how they put that together was superior.
So I guess the question is not what is the more important film,
No.
but what is the better film? And specifically, in which was Donald Sutherland better?
Yeah. So I think that you're going to get a bigger performance and a meatier role out of 6 Degrees of Separation. However, people always point to Donald Sutherland's part being kind of this pivot moment in the film
This
for
cog.
JFK. Yeah, very much so. I wouldn't say even a cog, an axle. I mean,
Okay.
it's like it drives a lot of the plot. So I'll leave it to you guys to talk about what you think.
This is another tough one, man.
It was pretty easy for me.
Okay, so what do you go
Go.
with?
I didn't rewatch 6 Degrees of. I saw it years ago. For my taste, a little maudlin. Probably is the meatier, as you said, Sutherland role. I really love JFK, and even though you don't have to agree with the conspiracy theory stuff, you can look at it as just a film, and the editing in that motherfucker is just incredible. The special effects, after I found out that the Zapruder film was recreated and not the actual Zapruder film as I initially thought. And then, again, focusing on Sutherland, I do think that he's kind of, even though his role is so small, it is one of the more important roles in the film because of what it leads into.
So you're going JFK.
Yeah, I'm going JFK. Some people consider JFK like one of the best films of the 90s. I haven't done that calculation in my mind, but definitely JFK is.
So I'm going to base my pick purely on performance, not necessarily the film itself, but the amount of Donald Sutherland that we get, and also its relationship to Hollywood and the kind of sleight of the hand that can be done with the world of cinema. And so I'm going with 6 Degrees of Separation.
So am I. Sorry, Todd.
Interesting. I was actually surprised that, and not to argue with you two guys, but I was actually surprised that the Rotten Tomatoes score was higher for it. Just because, you will find people that have JFK high on their lists of movies from the 90s. So maybe it is a little more polarizing.
I think it's probably a result of Oliver Stone being so polarizing.
He is.
And
also
a huge asshole.
A 98-minute movie is far more accessible than a
Yeah, that's a good
3.5 hour
point,
film.
too. Yeah, it is really long.
The last two, we've got Space Cowboys from 2000, Rotten Tomatoes score of 78%, directed by Clint Eastwood.
Which, this was kind of a prelude to his Get Off My Lawn series.
Yes, this is the beginning of it. Starring Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, James Garner, Donald Sutherland, Marcia Gay Harden, James Cromwell, and William Devane.
And Courtney B. Vance.
Oh, yeah, Courtney B. Vance has a role. Good job. Synopsis.
When retired engineer Frank Corvin is called upon to rescue a failing satellite, he insists that his equally old teammates accompany him into space. First of all, this would never, ever happen. Like, this is on the heels of John Glenn going back into space, so everybody's like, oh yeah, we can send old guys up there. And no.
Yeah. This you've heard me talk about geezer teasers, where you've got the old people who have like 10 minutes of screen time. This is a geezer pleaser. This represents a time when studios would still make pictures for an older audience. That's just not happening these days. So it is kind of an interesting snapshot into what films were being made around the time with big budgets.
The turn of the century.
However, the believability was ridiculous. Donald Sutherland, though, I did like his part. I thought he was amusing. He had, again, that leftover hippie scruffiness.
He was the goofy one.
He was the engineer, though. He knew everything. Everything was up in his head. And, boy, could he mac with the ladies.
I'm going to be honest. I ran out of time and didn't watch. I never saw, and I didn't feel bad, though. I put this last on the list of the ones that I hadn't seen because the matchup is a slaughter. In my opinion, if I were to put together a list of, let's say, the top 20 films of all time, I would have.
Let's go right into that one then. We're looking at Don't Look Now
from the number 2 seed,
1973, 93% Rotten Tomatoes, directed by Nicholas Roeg.
Yeah, he also directed Walkabout,
which is a great
love
movie.
it.
Great
The
movie.
Witches, the 1990 version with Angelica Houston, and the David Bowie film, The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Okay, then. That gives you a picture. Starring Donald Sutherland, Julie Christie, Adelina Porio, Hilary Mason, and Sharon Williams.
Yeah.
You want to give us a synopsis?
Well, first, I didn't know a lot about this movie going in. And my research told me that there were some controversies about the explicit sex scene between Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. It was one of the first graphic depictions of cunnilingus in a major film. Now, granted, they were simulating. They weren't actually, going to the downtown business district, but it was pretty hot.
Yeah.
Pretty steamy. A married couple grieving the recent death... Oh, this sounds really bad after I talking about that. A married couple grieving the recent death of their young daughter are in Venice when they encounter two elderly sisters, one of whom is psychic and brings a warning from beyond. Now, Donald Sutherland's character is an architectural restorationist. He's restoring an old church.
Right.
And Julie Christie is a believer. Like, she immediately... Okay, go ahead.
Well, she becomes one. She wasn't initially. You can tell she wasn't initially because of some of the arguments she has with her husband.
Give us a little bit better breakdown of what's going on here.
Well, so the opening scene is one of the most tragic and just oh my god scenes in the beginning of film, and I guess I can spell it out because it's not really a spoiler per se. But they have two children, and one of those children, while they're in the house, they're outside. The kids are outside playing. One of them drowns in a lake or a pond.
And she's wearing a
red
raincoat.
Raincoat that becomes very important in the film.
Yes.
In an otherwise diffuse colored film, the red becomes super important.
Much like the little girl in Schindler's List.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but I wonder if that was an influence on Spielberg. But anyway, the part that you mentioned about her character becoming a believer, what ends up happening is they encounter these two sisters in a restaurant, and one of the sisters, who's blind and has like the kind of grayish eyes,
the milky white eyes from blindness. Yes.
Correct. Has psychic abilities, and she has claimed to have
contacted their dead daughter.
Right. And so Julie Christie is latching on to this.
She's buying into it in a desperate attempt at hope.
Correct. Whereas the Donald Sutherland character is resistant to it initially, even though I think one of the interesting things about this film, and people sometimes forget this when you see writings about it, his character is actually said to have psychic abilities that he's denying.
Huh.
One of the sisters at one point in the movie, they don't make a big deal about it, maybe that's why, but at one point in the movie,
see or
one of the
something like
sisters
that.
says, "Oh, he has the vision."
Yeah, he
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah.
They so readily invite him up to their room, and
We see that though at the beginning of the movie, because if you remember when the daughter falls into the pond, before it happens, he senses something's going on
Yeah.
and runs out of the
he's
house.
a sensitive. Yes.
Yeah.
We
Anyway.
can't get too much into the spoilers.
Yes, I'm sorry,
but no, it's fine. But I will say this about the spoilers is that having watched this movie just like 3 or 4 years ago, in my mind, the last 10 minutes of the film comprise way more of the film. I was shocked.
The first two acts are a slow burn.
Oh, very slow.
And I love it though. The Milan setting is brilliantly used. They use it like
Venice.
a puzzle.
Venice.
Venice. I'm sorry, I said Milan. Venice.
God, Todd,
I know.
Jesus.
Getting my
Mulan
European
is set in
countries.
China.
Go ahead.
But they emphasize that they make it a puzzle. Any corner they go around when they're walking, they get lost. They
Yes.
get you know,
Yes.
and it's really cool how they
Yeah.
used that setting.
The thing I will say about this, and it's not a spoiler, but how subtly they seed the murders that are happening in Venice. Very matter of factly, a body is being fished out of the waterways,
Right.
and it's not a big deal, which is funny because it struck me how we're faced with these crazy things that happen around us, either a murder or an accident or a death or whatever, but because we're living our lives, it's just something that happens, and it doesn't really impact us until it comes time to impact us, and that's
Until
exactly
it hits
how
close to home.
Well, and you mentioned the matter of factness in one of the scenes that's easy to take for granted when they're fishing a body out of the pond. That was very clearly a real person. Someone stood perfectly still,
Yeah.
coming up off the crane, got their ass pushed up on the boat. I mean, that was.
I
can do that.
I
You
watched
know.
that with Allie last Friday night, I believe, right after we recorded last episode, and I believe she even said something about how amazing that was.
Right.
So, good stuff. All right, so, gosh, we're going to go head to head. Space Cowboys versus Don't Look Now. I already know Todd's answer.
Oh, this is a 40-point slaughter.
Travis?
Yeah,
any-
I think it's pretty obvious
counterpoint?
that
All right.
Don't Look
Don't
Now
Look
is
Now.
the superior movie.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to jump into the Elite Eight. First up, we've got our number 1 seed, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, versus the number 9 seed, MASH.
Oof.
There's no contest for me.
Yeah, this is fairly easy. I like MASH a lot. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, though, just I don't know.
That's my take.
Special effects.
Yeah, you guys are right. MASH is a very good film, and it spawned a very successful TV series.
One of the best
It's,
TV series of all time.
like critically and according to the Guinness Book of World Records, it's one of the best TV series of all time.
And I think to this day, still the most watched episode of all time was the
the
final
finale?
episode of
Yeah.
MASH. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going with Invasion as well
Okay.
because it is a better film and it had more of a cultural impact in terms of niche cinema and sci-fi, and it's more in my domain.
And it's well crafted.
And we didn't mention
Practical
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum. Practical effects that are creepy as
Oh,
fuck.
the practical effects are amazing in this
Yep.
thing.
How do you think Donald Sutherland felt like taking a shovel to his own self?
That is a great scene.
That's
like,
a great
I don't
scene.
know.
Oh, what
yeah.
was the thing I forgot to mention during the dry white season in South Africa? Donald Sutherland contracted
spinal meningitis.
Holy
and because there was no readily available antibiotics,
He died?
He went into a coma, a life-threatening coma,
Holy
but
shit.
recovered.
But he obviously recovered.
Yeah. Wow.
That's just a testament to this dude.
Yep. All right. Next up, number 5, Panic versus number 4, Animal House.
Gotta go Animal House.
I think so. I like I said, with
I
the
liked
first
Panic.
half of Panic, I was like, holy
It's
shit.
no
lost
Grosse Pointe
classic.
Blank.
Lost a little bit of steam at the end. So and
All right.
It wishes it was Grosse Pointe Blank.
Animal House. All right, Kelly's Heroes, our big upset so far, 14-3. Whew. Going up against Ordinary People.
I think I'll go first. I'm going to go with Kelly's Heroes.
Wow.
The derivative of Dirty Dozen, perhaps, but I think it was the better film, even though it was derivative.
I'm going with Ordinary People. For
having
sure.
watched them both this week, and also Ordinary People. For my, this is a taste thing, but kind of soap operatic,
a little bit depressing,
a little melodramatic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Kelly's Heroes.
I'm going to go with Ordinary People,
Same here.
although I think that Kelly's Heroes is an underrated film, and it's a good one. People, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's fun. So Ordinary People is going to advance. Then we're looking at 6 Degrees of Separation versus Don't Look Now. Sorry to laugh. That's the number 7 versus number 2.
It's a laugher.
Yeah, we got to go with Don't Look Now.
Yep.
Don't Look Now is like, I don't know, who was like imagine the number 1 seed who was a major favorite. I think it happened this year, actually, and just romped over everybody. For me, this is that, at least so far.
Okay.
Don't Look Now.
All right, final 4. Invasion of the Body Snatchers versus Animal House.
Ooh. This is
Todd,
kinda
you
tough.
go first.
Man, this is a buzzer beater, but I'm going with Invasion.
It's not a contest, in my opinion. You
Wow.
have Donald Sutherland in Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a powerhouse role where he's the leading man in a horror movie, and
Horror sci-fi.
and
Yeah.
he has you guessing up till the end. Iconic moments in that movie.
But Animal House is iconic too, though.
It is.
Yeah, but
So it's
that
like-
meme,
and,
that
you know-
meme, baby.
Yeah, right.
Travis.
Man, this is a tough one for me. I'm going to have to go with Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. It's just a superior film.
Yeah.
As much as I love a good college romp.
Yep. It's a good romp, but I don't think that Donald Sutherland's presence is enough to carry
and
it.
that,
You're right,
if nothing else, that has to be the deciding
Now,
factor.
if you are
Yeah.
ignorant and you think that Donald Sutherland plays D-Day in Animal House, he has a much larger role.
Yes. All right, Ordinary People versus Don't Look Now. Todd, I already know your
well,
answer.
I mean, Don't Look Now. Let's go.
Travis.
Now, you just watched, just for clarification, you watched Don't Look Now for the first time this week. Is that right?
Correct.
Interesting.
I'm just going to go on carnal knowledge here. I'm going Ordinary People.
Okay.
I think that in terms of his performance, it was more dramatic. It was more, I guess, emotional.
Yeah.
So I've got to go with Ordinary People.
Jesus.
So it comes down to you, Shawn.
So it's me, huh? Wow. Don't Look Now is a superior movie, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think that Donald Sutherland is more tight-lipped and a little bit reserved, but geez, Ordinary People, he's out there. He's
But
more
there's something to be
exposed.
said for restrained, though, versus, reserve. I don't know. I think it's a great performance in Don't Look Now as well. Anyway, sorry.
I think I'm going to go against my initial gut and go with Ordinary People because I really like that extra dimension of vulnerability in Ordinary People that is not in Don't Look Now, which is interesting. These two films both feature a father who has lost a child,
Yes.
Right.
and is dealing with some marital strife in both cases. I think that I empathize more with his Ordinary People role.
Yep.
And and for that very reason, I'm going to push it forward. So now you've got your finals.
Okay.
You've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers against the upset Ordinary People, the number 6 seed versus the number 1 seed.
Easy for me, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I like Ordinary People, but again, personal taste thing.
Yeah.
Soap operatic. Great performance by Sutherland and Ordinary People, but Invasion.
I agree with you. I think that if it came down to it and I was going to pick one of these two movies to watch on a Friday night, I'm going with Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
So, how crazy is it that this podcast that was founded on the belief that remakes are bad Our number one Donald Sutherland movie is Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well, as I said at the beginning of the movie, I mean, this is pretty much the consensus pick.
It's one
as
of
the
those
best,
cases where the remake is better than the original.
Yeah,
and
and
the
also,
original's great.
like, this one is so good that people forgot there was an original.
Yeah.
It's just like Cronenberg's The Fly. It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
same thing where
Cronenberg's
it's
like,
very
correct.
definitive.
Both are really good, but the remake, yeah.
All right, so we went super long on this, but that's cool. It was worth it. It was for a good cause. It was
There's
a great.
at least a few burps that can get edited out.
It was a great actor who deserved our time, energy, and effort. We watched a shitload of movies.
Rest in peace and rest in power.
Donald
And
Sutherland.
I think
badass.
Kiefer, you know, his Instagram post, I think he's right. He said that in his opinion, his dad was among the most consequential actors in history, and I think his argument was just because you got 6 decades
spanning 2 different centuries.
yeah,
like,
and different performances. Like you couldn't pigeonhole him in a particular role. Different styles of film, and then classics in almost every era that he appeared in a movie.
Find me somebody who's got something bad to say about Donald Sutherland, and
Yeah.
I'll show you a guy with a bloody nose.
oh,
All right.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap us up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're going to be back in a few weeks. We've got a holiday weekend coming up and probably another scheduling snafu, but we promise we will return with
we're
some more
brainstorming right now.
good shit. And in the meantime, please follow us and subscribe, rate, and review. We're Cinema Chop Shop everywhere except for YouTube, where we're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. And be good to yourself, love your neighbor, love yourself. And
Tell your friends you love them.
Tell them, and enjoy every minute you've got on this green earth, and watch plenty of movies. And in the meantime, please remember to
Watch, shop, retrofit.